So I'm picking up. The topic is toy games and modern design techniques. Yes, modern design techniques. This is a discussion that I recently went through on the miniatures page. It's under the game design section of the message board section of the in general section. Okay. Pick up T. Gerritsen writes here. Honestly, I feel as if his argument, referring to the original post copied material, the excerpt given in the original post, is a bit off. Modern designers are certainly using modern professional game design techniques to appeal to wider audiences. At this point, I'm not sure that what T. Gerritsen is talking about as modern professional game design techniques is exactly what is meant in the original excerpt. Now, I have to admit that I'm not positive. I know what the original poster was referring to, but I got a different sense than T. Gerritsen did here. When I read T. Gerritsen here, I'm thinking that he's referring to card play, cubes, whatever else is associated as modern game design techniques. Again, I'm not sure if that's what was meant by the original post. Therein lies the rub, as modern designers work very hard to create game systems that audiences will buy. What makes a successful set of game mechanics doesn't necessarily mesh with what would make a great warfare simulation. Okay, but what, T. Gerritsen, do you think would make a great warfare simulation? It doesn't have to be that way, but it's certainly a complex task. I assume he means making a set of game mechanics that does mesh with what would make a great warfare simulation. If that's what he means, then absolutely, that must be a very complex task, I would think. Since he goes on about making a professional modern design of warfare as a system, then I have to assume that his beef is directed at those designers who are very successful at getting people to buy and enjoy their games, but who prefer systems that are well-crafted games first and deep warfare systems second. I'm not sure what's meant there exactly. Then he quotes the original material. I don't play many commercial products. Okay, and so T. Gerritsen writes, and there is the reason why a game designer who realizes that this is a business should probably not listen to your arguments. Okay, so T. Gerritsen is saying to the author of that original excerpt, because you don't play many commercial products, game designers who I guess want to be successful shouldn't listen to your arguments. Okay. Let's say there were literally dozens of systems out there that do what you ask. Would you buy them? Okay. Interesting question on T. Gerritsen's part. The customer customer votes with their wallet. The original poster is hoping that his own preferences are the norm. Okay. Possibly. Yeah, he probably believes that there is a vastly undeserved audience just like him. I don't know about that. That's the beauty of a free market. Here we go back to the free market idea. If you are right, it's a business opportunity. If you are wrong or unwilling to give it a go, then like the eternal question of how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop, the world may never know. Okay, not exactly sure where T. Gerritsen was going with that. McLatty comes back again. Okay, so he quotes the passage about don't forget that simple does not necessarily mean simplistic, and then referencing Blucher, etc. So McLatty says, Tony, I agree if and only if we have some technical definition of what makes a deeper rule set. Okay. By the way, I'm generally sympathetic to McLatty's desire for more technical definitions of key terms, but I just don't think deeper is ever going to fall under that. And I'm not being pessimistic. I just think deeper is, by definition, imprecise. I think there are many other technical or many other key terms that we discuss a lot as wargamers that should be ironed out into more technical definitions, but deeper isn't one of them, I think. And it can't be determined by someone's feelings, and this is why I agree with McLatty. And this is going to become a key theme here. Yeah, it's gonna start raising its head quite a bit here. Not if we're talking about wargame design. For instance, you make the distinction. Okay, chain of command is simple, etc. Bolt action is simple, yet it is toy soldiers, etc. So McLatty says, would the designers and players of BA bolt action agree with you if chain of command is deeper than bolt action, but both are simple? What is the distinction? Which is a valid question. Can anyone see it, or is it just a matter of personal preference? ? So then McLatty quotes, the designer of chain of command has stated that he quite deliberately kept the rules simple, etc. So McLatty responds, wait, why can't bolt action's designers say that, or have the same philosophy? I wonder the same thing that McLatty does. Is ability to use historical tactics what makes the game deeper, or the KISS philosophy? Good question. In saying that, I do agree that chain of command is by far the better simulation of small unit warfare. One of the ways I know that, rather than just having a feeling, is that Rich C. detailed historical combat tactics World War II and his Rich C. detailed historical combat tactics World War II and his design in several blogs. By the way, that does, like McLatty, that means something to me. I value that as well, I will admit. When the bolt action folks do it, they always use vague similes. I don't know about that, but I don't doubt that McLatty's got that right. So then McLatty quotes, but damn, it is indeed hard to write simple set of rules that accurately reflect a period. Okay. Yeah, and like I said before, McLatty agrees it sure is, which is why so few designers attempt it, and many wargame designers don't really try. I don't know that for a fact, but McLatty's probably onto something. Even identifying that effort is confusing. For instance, the designer of Blucher has stated in a number of places, including TMP, that there is nothing historical about wargames, and we aren't simulating anything but pushing little lead figures around on a table, quote unquote, and now cards. Of course, I am not going to. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Sam Mustafa is the designer of Blucher, and I am not going to presume that I know. I'm not going to presume that I know that McLatty is getting the debate accurately here. But just on the face of McLatty's comments here, which is what I'm focusing on, I have a problem with there's nothing historical about war games. Great discussion to focus on. I'll just say I'll put my aiming stakes in the ground. I don't agree with the idea that there's nothing historical about war. There is something, and there can be something historical about war games. It's just a question of what. Okay. I don't want to get off this topic. So if that is his philosophy, Mustafa, how deep can Blucher possibly be? Why would I even look for depth if it feels like Napoleonic command regardless? Again, McLatty has a valid question, which is one of the designer's arguments against trying. Same is true of bolt action. I continue to think that one major step in improving game design for the hobby is to get on some of the same technical pages when talking about game design, like the greater game design community. Not sure what McLatty's getting at here for certain. I think I have an idea, but I'm not certain. Part of that would be to recognize the difference between introductory war games and deeper design efforts. They both have a place in the hobby. Okay. Otto at Home writes, improving game design is simple. It's called Red Pen. So this is Otto at Home's idea. It's interesting. Whatever whatever your period, time, or frame of reference, your task is simple. Determine the entry point of the gamer in the game and make up the rules and the game to present to him the real-life choices he will be faced with at that entry point. If he's a platoon leader, realizing that Sergeant Rock will not be required to order troops 3 miles away what to do, and no one is going to come to him to ask him if he should move up the reserves. If you are the commander of a wing of the army, left, right, or center, no one is going to inspect his backpack and see if he has extra ammo in there instead of silk stockings and chocolate for the mademoiselle and Fräuleins. At that level, individual unit formations are completely irrelevant. Chop out anything not pertinent to the supposed role of the player as commander. Any old 5 pages of rules would do for that, but that's not something you can charge someone $100 plus to snooker them into thinking they're Napoleon. If a gamer really was a Napoleon, he wouldn't need rules like, quote, all French are +3 and everything. So do you really believe that biology has determined that a Frenchman is 50% better as a human being in war than anyone else? Of course, the poster winds up on an argument that seems to be completely off the track here, but back higher here, I'm just going to note, I'm not sure it's going to come out very clearly in this discussion, but there seems to be, from the discussions that I've been following recently, there seems to be a very strong assumption on the part of many wargamers. Of course, I'm talking about wargamers who post in the discussions that I'm following, that the game designer must put the player in some particular place on the battlefield. That the designer must put the player in the boots of some particular commander. There's an assumption that that's what designers should do. There's the assumption that that's what gamers want. There are assumptions all over the place. I challenge that. I don't think that it is self-evident or obvious or automatically the goal of game design to model the player from some particular vantage point on a battlefield. So anyways, I'll have time to return to this. Just that the basic assumption that this is just the way to go, I reject that. There are other ways of doing it, and it's not clear to me that this is the way that we should be going. There's nothing wrong if that's what a designer wants to do, but and I know I'm going to return to this in many other iterations of this, okay? But my bottom line argument is, if you really want to put the player in the role of a particular commander, you might as well just go role playing, because that's what you're asking. It's what you're asking the game/simulation to do. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's a completely different game format, not to mention game design effort, than recreating battles. To recreate a battle, you don't have to put the players in some particular spot on the battlefield, in the skin of some particular commander. All right, I think I'll have an opportunity to return to that. Pure's brand. I like pushing figures around tables. It's fun. I like fun. I like it far more than adult hobby with modern design, whatever that is. Sounds best. Yeah, whatever. I always think it's best in a hobby with such personal taste as this one to extol the virtues of your preferred means of perusing the hobby without demeaning the other ways people like to pursue it. Your taste may not always be right for everyone else and vice versa. By the way, Pure's brand, I completely agree with you, but it's funny that you say that, because I'm not sure I didn't get that anybody was, as you say, demeaning anyone's pursuits in the hobby. So while I agree with you, I'm not sure what you're referring to about anybody demeaning anyone else. Although maybe it doesn't mean Pure's brand isn't referring to something very specific. But I don't know. I don't immediately know what he's referring to. Who asked this Joker comes back? If you have a 180-page rule book and 90 of them are actual rules, you may not have a simple war game. Yeah, maybe not. If you have a series of 10-minute videos explaining how... Anyways, I'm not going to finish this. Obviously, I agree with who asked this Joker. If you have a simple war game, you should be able to communicate the war game simply. I agree. I got it. I don't need to go through all this text. Tony S. writes, excellent points, McLaddy. The sticking point is indeed the definition of deeper. Yeah, that's definitely the sticking point. For the lack of anything more concrete, I'm defaulting to feel. Eek. Deeper to feel is like, that's, it's not going to be an improvement. An entirely subjective, completely personal definition, to be sure. If it's entirely subjective and completely personal, I'm not sure it's very useful as a definition, but I'll go on. If I feel immersed in the game, immersion. This is another topic I want to hit and re-hit. Immersion. If I feel immersed in the game and it felt, more subjectiveness, accurate based on my own personal biases and research and opinions, then it is deeper to me. Okay, so linking, this is not a unique perspective that Tony S. has here. Immersion linked to deepness, which is also linked to personal research and opinions, understanding, perspective. Length of rules make no difference. In fact, I'll argue the more rules, the more dirt and minutiae contained therein, and the less likely I'll get an historically accurate feel. This is completely, I'm not disagreeing with the idea, but this is a completely subjective opinion that I know a lot of gamers have. A lot of gamers have the opinion that, quote unquote, more and more dirt and minutiae gets in the way of an historically accurate feel. I would just emphasize that in and of itself is a completely subjective feeling, and no more accurate than, a lot of other feelings. More probably I'll just get a headache and frustration from constantly looking up rules instead of playing. All right, so who is this? Tony S. quotes, would the designers and players of Bolt Action agree with you, etc.? So he's quoting McLaddy, as I recall. Okay, so he responds, sure, I'll admit a modicum of personal preference, but given both games have the same ground scale, how can one explain that in Bolt Action, rifles have a scale range of 40 yards, in Chain of Command, rifles can cover the entire table, or at a scale of 200 yards, or that in World War II, platoons would, by and large, break into two teams, one of fire and one of maneuver. Can't do that in Bolt Action, so historical tactics are impossible. Interesting questions or interesting issue. I think anyone can easily see that, as both sets of rules are extremely clear in stating such things. Do such things mean a game is deeper? To me, yes. See, I'm following you with the previous paragraph, linking that to deeper. I don't know. I just don't get that leap to depth. Okay. Again, he quotes, wait, why can't Bolt Action's designers say that, etc.? Tony S. responds, I did not state that simple is the only definition of deeper. I just stated that it is a mark of it. By the way, this is, I'm going to pick on Tony S., but man, this I see this again and again in these discussions. I did not state that simple is the only definition of deeper. Yes, that's true, but how is somebody reading your post supposed to know that that's not what you meant? Oh God, I'm going on. I just stated that it is a mark of it. I don't think deeper is a simple binary yes-no question, okay? A checklist, by the way, saying a simple binary yes-no question, which again is such a typical phrase these days, it's really redundant. You don't need to say simple binary yes-no question. A checklist might be more appropriate, so yep. In my example, both Chain of Command and Bolt Action get the tick for simple, but in my estimation, Chain of Command also gets a tick for accuracy. See, now you're introducing the concept of accuracy. A great concept, an important concept to introduce, but now it's being brought in kind of full force to the discussion. Okay. Then again, are you saying that deeper is a mark of replay value of infinite strategies, whatever infinite strategies that's supposed to mean, with no single unbeatable game-breaking rules tactic? I have great respect for Sam Mustafa. By the way, this is where, right there, I just said it, quote, with no single unbeatable game-breaking rules tactic, unquote. This is another one of these little hints in my mind that that gamers, well, actually this discussion has come up at least once very overtly that I've seen recently. There's a perfectly valid concept of tactic in a game sense. Well, actually, I'll even say in a game, within the concept of gameplay. There's a perfectly valid definition of tactic, and for that matter, strategy. In other words, there is, with respect to gameplay, there are perfectly valid definitions of tactics and strategy. But there, of course, are the military definitions of tactics and strategy, at least. Maybe some others, and there might be a business variant, etc. In any case, I think some of our discussions get confused at the very least, when people in the same discussion are referring to different meanings of tactics and strategy. So, if anything, we should really try to, when McLatty, I think, talks about definitions, etc., that's one that we should at least take on directly in full force and decide what we mean when we're talking about tactics and strategy. All right, I'll go on for now. I have great respect for Sam Mustafa, the designer of Blucher, and I've heard his comments about toy soldiers. Naturally, since that is ultimately what we are doing, it is difficult to refute that. At the end of the day, we are not seeking scholarly insight in the Frederican method of warfare, nor Kriegspieling a potential attack on Midway to hone our battle plans. We are merely seeking a good time with friends in an enjoyable mental contest. Pause right now because this made me want to interject when I read it the first time. And again, this is something that I'll have to return to and expand on at another time when it's more the central topic. But one of the reasons why I play war games, and for that matter, a very important reason why I started playing war games, why I continue to play war games, is to understand war better, is to practice decision making, and in some cases, practice tactics, strategy, operational art. But more importantly, it's to practice estimates of the situation, course of action development, and decision making. So these remarks, I won't even characterize them here because it's okay the way it's framed here. But again, we're back to it's not a good argument to just fall back at some point in a discussion, in a debate, and say, yeah, but I'm just playing war games for fun. I mean, that's not an argument. And I guess I'll leave it at that for now. But I'm going to be returning to this because I take this on full force, frontal assault. I'll go on a frontal assault when I counter this idea that there's basically no. I won't even characterize the other side at this point. I'll wait for a better opportunity. There have been, continuing on, there have been other designers in the past that have bragged about the historical accuracy of their designs and their detailed and painstaking research to create army lists. Mustafa's comments in Aurelian about the Palmyrans are quite revealing with respect to that. I'm thinking he does not want to fall into that arrogant trap. Okay, and yeah, Blucher went through many revisions before it saw the light of day. I'm sure many of those games were quite good, but in Professor Mustafa's opinion, they did not feel like the subject matter he was trying to emulate. Okay, I guess I'll let Mustafa communicate his own opinion on that. Another important hallmark to me of that elusive historical feel is comparing my tabletop battles to first-person accounts of that period or battle. If it happened in real life, any rule set where that could happen gets positive marks in my book. Conversely, if an action in real life could not ever happen on the table, it gets a black mark. Like a World War II rifle round traveling only 40 yards. I have a problem with this paragraph, but I am not in a point yet to try to fully communicate it. What I do know, and I will be returning to, is if it hasn't come out clearly by now, and actually I don't think I was very clear about it so far in this monologue, historical feel, or even feel in a game, which is an incredibly common, what do you call it? It's almost like a crutch that we use to talk about war games is hugely problematic for me. It's darn near meaningless. But anyways, I'll wait till that's another time when that's the focus of the discussion directly. I've read many accounts of Napoleon's brilliance, not on the battlefield, but rather his ability to outmarch, outmaneuver his opponents in the days and weeks before the day of battle, which Blücher somewhat uniquely covers the little campaign game. I'm not sure what's meant here, or the Napoleonic timing. At just the right time, the reserves are released for the masse de rupture, which I think Blücher handles beautifully. Okay, or perhaps his Maurice set of rules. Okay, so, or perhaps, I guess he's referring to Mustafa's set of rules titled Maurice. I've heard a lot of people complain about the Magic Marsh card. Okay, I'm going to skip this. This is kind of specific stuff. I'd also argue that a simple war game might not necessarily be a good introductory war game. That's an interesting idea, and I've actually wondered about that. Having gamed for 40 years and played and read a huge variety of rules, what I regard as simple, quote-unquote, for the grognard might not be easy to grasp for a new player, simply because there is little that is new under the wargaming sun. And I've encountered a lot of different mechanisms over the years. All right, he's starting to lose me again. I think Chain of Command is simple as bolt action, but I have evidence to the contrary. What? All right, I've completely lost what he's trying to say at this point. In our little group, a couple of younger players. All right, I am going to go through this paragraph because I think this is another one of those interesting observations on the hobby today. So in our little group, a couple of younger players tried both Chain of Command and bolt action, and have ended up playing bolt action exclusively. The only other wargame experience they've really had has been GW and its close cousin, Flames of War. To them, bolt action is nigh on revolutionary with its activation system. Okay, the Chain of Command activation system, the jump off points the tank hunters too far from the pale, and they found it confusing. They also lack the rest of our group. I'm not sure about the use of the phrase too far from the pale here. I'll continue on. They also lack the rest of our group's historical knowledge about World War II. I've refrained from mentioning some of their more egregious uniform painting errors, although I do admit I balked a bit when one of them showed up with a Churchill Avery for a 1940 game in France. I gotta say, these are cute little asides that long-time dedicated miniatures war games players can snicker at together, but this is completely this is a sign of the kind of the ridiculousness that we can perpetuate in this hobby. Uniform painting errors, really? Completely not even worth mentioning, ever. But they are having fun, so I bite my lip and don't demean their choice of rules. All right. He quotes, I continue to think that one major step in improving game design for the hobby is to get on some of the same technical pages. Okay, McLaddy said this. So now he's responding, laudable, but that might be difficult. I certainly cannot definitely classify deeper or feel clearly enough to put down on paper. Yes, and this is an issue. And I suspect you might also be struggling to define such terms as well. Well, actually, I don't know about that. The best I can do is say that I know it when I see it. Yeah. On an individual case-by-case basis. Even worse, I have found that my tastes have changed over the years. Upon occasion, I've dusted off old rules I used to like and discovered that they are, to the current me, dreadful. So I absolutely agree with Piers Brand. I try not to ever demean someone without my exquisite taste in wargame rules. Okay. All right, Phil Duder. In the end, it depends on what the goal is of miniature wargaming. Miniature wargaming is a medium Miniature wargaming as a medium has its limits and constraints. I think there are better means available today to train military officers, which is funny because Phil Duder immediately goes off on to training of military officers. To train military officers or to simulate or study military decision making. Okay, yeah, maybe. Maybe there are better means available. It's not as if military academies or academic departments still have heaps of toy soldiers lying around to study military operations. Okay, I'm shaking my head because, I'm scratching my head because he says, I think there are better means available today to train military officers or to simulate or study military decision making. Maybe, but that's not the point. As an Army officer, we want to use many different means together. We want to use many different means because sometimes different means are appropriate for different settings. And sometimes simply using different means to train, educate military officers and study military decision making. Sometimes that just benefits from using different means because different means can show slightly different perspectives on the issues. So I'm just scratching my head saying, where's this coming from? I'm also scratching my head because I used wargaming some as a company commander to go over military decision making with my platoon leaders, and that's something I'd like to talk about separately where I can go into it in detail. But having done this, again, I'm not sure why. I don't even know what to say. Just scratching my head where this is coming from. Seems a little out of left field. Hobby wargaming is what we do. Okay, hobby wargaming originated 100 years ago, and although we are cousins of the, I'm not sure what this historical recap is doing. So except that we were playing a game to have fun. That's what you're getting at. That's what you're getting at. So you're saying, I think there are better means available in the military context, which I don't agree with you. I think there's a very good reason to use wargaming. So I'm not with you there. And then you get down to playing games to have fun. Rules should be designed towards that goal, having a good time. That's what you're really saying. Why do you have to bring in the other stuff? You're just stating your opinion that it's all about having a good time to you. Okay, whether that game is a close mimicry of an actual battle is of lesser importance to you. Our games are inspired by military history, but they are not military history. Again, that's kind of obvious. Why is that an argument? Our games with toy soldiers stop being blah, blah, blah. Let's not pretend they still are, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of again, let's not pretend they still are. This is kind of who's he arguing with? Perhaps someday someone will succeed in making a game that perfectly reflects historical tactics and decision making, that gives players insights into how military staff works. Again, why is it about insights how military staff works? This is for another time when it's the focus of the monologue. That is visually appealing, completely irrelevant to me, that plays fast and is fun. That is a challenge both as a game and as a study of military history. Again, why both? For now, I'm happy if a game hits the right buttons for one of these things. Okay, that's a valid, opinion. That's a valid. I got you there. But I do not agree. But I do agree that in order to design better war games, one is far better off by study games design rather than military history. The avant-garde in games design is not to be found in miniature wargaming these days. That status was lost in the 70s when role-playing split off. Okay, I'm not sure about that. I don't know what to say about that. All right. Wolfhag. writes, I think bolt action gets the nod for many new players because the command dice give a good feel. Here we are again, return to the feel to the game, and is intuitive. It also gives, I want to talk about intuitive. Again, I'm not going to be able to fully develop the idea here. I will return to it. Let me tell you, when I was a platoon leader, and I started out, when I went out there in my first test, which is a training exercise, field training exercise. I'm basically being tested the first time, leading my platoon through operations. I'm telling you, okay, let's not overemphasize the value of this intuitive stuff. Okay, there's nothing intuitive. I'll tell you right now, bottom line, there's nothing intuitive about military art, and certainly not intuitive about military science. Give up this fixation with intuitive. Okay, there's nothing intuitive about being a military leader, commander. That's why you have to be selected and trained and gain experience, because it's not intuitive. All right, I may have missed the use of the concept intuitive in this particular post, but yeah. It also gives them a chance to make a decision. It uses the D6 dice in a way for players to understand shooting and defending. Okay, not sure about that. However, maybe I need to play bolt action and I'll get what Wolfhag's talking about. However, the more real military experience you have and read up on military history, you see where the game is lacking. It's a good entry into gaming and a reason that many game shops like carrying it. Okay, look, bottom line is I have bolt action rulebook. It's sitting right behind me. The bottom line is the bolt action rulebook looks great. It's incredibly eye-catching. It's incredibly attractive. It has interesting enough mechanics. I'm not sure there's much more to it than that. Okay, much of the feel for any game is at what level of command you allow the player to. We're back to this thing. What level of command you allow the player to control. It appears to me, for most new players, they like the lower level games where you can control single vehicles and troops. All right, I talked about this before, and we'll be returning to this more and more directly as the setting, allows. But when I first was introduced to war games many years ago, as I suggested earlier in this monologue, the first question that came to my mind was not, hey, what level am I representing? What level is this game letting me be? That only came later for me, when I kind of put my military history reading, back onto the games, which means that I had to learn kind of the general concepts of war gaming. I had to understand generally how rules work and the mechanics, blah, 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 blah. Then I could go back and say, okay, now what have I experienced in my study of military history? Okay, okay. Maybe this is why the mechanics are the way they are, because the game design is kind of putting me at this level of command, okay? But it's not right off the bat important. I don't understand why it's right off the bat important for players to consider what level the game is letting them be. Maybe that's a personal thing on my part. These are the games that are most popular at conventions and blah, blah, blah. Best visual effects, attracts them, blah, blah, blah. A game that tells a player he's a company commander but allows the player to have each figure fire individually. I don't think I'm going to agree with this stuff right here. Each figure fire individually at enemy targets may not be realistic, as a company commander would not control that action. However, it is something that players like and contributes to the fun. Absolutely, by the way. I agree with the idea, the excessive focus on combat in war games essentially comes down to a desire for what players want to be doing in the game. That's something you have to keep in mind. Yeah, keep designing the game. Got it. Which is why when I'm thinking about game design, I'm thinking about ways to pull the players off of this, excessive focus on firing, combat, close combat, because there is so much more to consider and so much more that's more interesting to consider. Anyways, another topic, another time. I think one of the challenges for designers is where to balance the realism, that realism with what players want, absolutely, and what is fun for them. I agree. Huge challenge for designers to balance realism with what designers perceive players want and what designers perceive players will find fun. Seems like some of the new activation methods are interesting and fun for players and generate some randomness and fog of war. However, for me, using dice and cards to tell me what I can and can't do takes a lot of the feel, takes away a lot of the feel of the game. Here we go back to feel. Totally agree, a unit is not going to perform exactly how the player wants, but randomness plays only a small part. Yeah. I actually agree with that idea there, although, again, the feel issue is a separate issue. I want to zero in on at another time. I went back to the drawing board to develop a game that gives the players a chance to control a tank crew engaging and firing targets or an infantry. Okay, I'm going to skip this. Yeah, skip this. Okay. And take another break at this point. Where did the 40 minutes go?